This is the Michael Brighton Show. Hi everyone, welcome back to the show. Today I'm joined with Corey Lewis, who's a former professional footballer and is a co-founder and CEO of One and One, which is a life and wellness platform helping people become 1% better every single day. Corey, thanks for joining me.
Thank you for having me.
So let's talk about this concept of 1% every single day. Lots of people talk about it. Some people use it as like a little tiny little bit better, and that's all you need, and things will compound over time. But what's it like actually living that way? You've got a lot of experience yourself, improving every single day. So what's it actually like to get 1% better?
Well, the goal is obviously you're not going to get 1% better every day, right? Like that's the fact of the matter. There's going to be some days where you get your ass kicked, you get your butt handed to you, and unfortunately, you might get a little worse. You might get 1% worse. However, if the goal is 1% better, it makes the ultimate goal that you're striving for or you're reaching towards more manageable, more reasonable. A lot of us have big dreams, big goals, big aspirations. But unfortunately, a lot of us like to look at the whole staircase as opposed to one step at a time. So 1% better to me breaks down the reality and creates a better reality for you when you're striving towards your life goals, whatever they may be, fitness goals, career goals, or wherever that may be. So 1% better to me just creates a more clear path and a more achievable path as opposed to, having that all or nothing mentality. And then you have these huge goals that you set for yourself. And then when you don't reach them, you get frustrated and you give up or you quit. That's because you tried to get 100% better in one day or, whatever it may be. And obviously as a wellness coach and having a wellness platform, I've worked with hundreds, thousands of people now, to help them change, and lose weight or whatever it may be. And yeah, they want to lose 100 pounds, but you can't lose 100 pounds in a week. So how do we get 1% better each day? And it gets you comfortable with losing 1 to 2 pounds a week. Some weeks you'll lose 3 to 4 pounds a week. Getting comfortable with that incremental progress. And that's what matters more. There's 365 days in a year. And if we can have more 1% better days than negative days, then we'll be in a pretty good place going into that next year.
Actually makes me think of 365% better, just doing it 1% every day. If that's the goal, then I'd be happy losing a couple of percent. I don't know about you.
Yeah, 100%. You get if let's just say you have 65 bad days, but you got 300% better. It's a pretty good year.
Yeah, yeah, definitely is. It makes me think of like being sustainable, being consistent, and very often it's more of a mental game. Like if you just wake up and go for a walk for 10 minutes, it might not be so bad until it's boring, until you can't figure out what to do, or just feel the drain of going out for a 10-minute walk every single day, twice a day. It tends to wear down mentally, I suppose, before physically. Talk to us a bit
Yep.
about that. Talk to us a bit about the mental health of people that are going through these programs and trying to make changes. Because very often the mechanics aren't so complicated and difficult to do.
Yep. So that's why for me, something we created, we have our habit forming app. That's like our grand poobah. That's our bread and butter, of our platform. And that's because our habits are everything, good and bad, right? It's typically we always like to say, show me your habits and I'll show you your future. And something like going for a 10-minute walk, yes, it may seem dreadful if it's not something that you're used to doing, but if you make it habitual and you go through this process of habituation, where you turn an action into a habit, it has tons of reward. I like to use the example of brushing our teeth. Right, when we grew up, our parents made us brush our teeth, and the way a habit gets formed is that there's a cue, there's an action, and then there's a reward, and then that cue could be time of day, which brushing teeth is either when you wake up or you go to bed, and it could be time of day, location, emotion. That could be the cue, and then the action is the action of doing something. So like brushing your teeth, And then the reward is, okay, I feel awake. I feel like, my mouth is clean, and that's the reward. And habits are formed when decision making is removed from the process. When I wake up every day, I don't even think about it. I just brush my teeth because it's a habit. So similar to going for a walk and breaking that down, it's okay if your 10-minute walk is only 5 minutes, or maybe you want to do 10 minutes or 30 minutes, but you start, you only start with 5 or 10, and then you continue to add on little by little. And that's what I mean by, you don't have to go, for the grand slam. You don't have to go for the whole thing right away. Really build up over time to turn these actions into habits. These actions that are good for you and rewarding, and into that habit, and really turn something from a dreadful position to a delight, right? And that just comes from staying consistent. And that's with anything, whether it's going to school, your career, creating an awesome podcast like you have. Like it's a habit of you don't want to do everything every day. There's nothing in life that you absolutely want to do every day, at least for me, besides sleep. So the action of doing something every single day, it's about putting in the work and staying consistent and forming that positive habit, knowing that's ultimately going to bridge the gap, to help you reach the goal that you're striving to reach.
Sometimes people can feel almost depressed or anxious by trying to do it. Like they've got this, whether it's a goal, whether it's an expectation, something that is making them feel like they're struggling, like they're having a hard time. Sometimes it's in the short term, sometimes it's in the long term. And it can be tough for people if they're not making progress or not seeing results, that sort of thing. How do you balance mental work with physical work? What kind of exercises would you suggest people do?
So for me, I'm a big believer in power hours. So what that is for me, whatever my first task of the day is, whatever that time may be, I try to get up 30 minutes to an hour before that, depending on how early it is. And I take that time to really set the tone for the day. So during that 30 minutes to an hour, I meditate. I'm a spiritual person, so I read my Bible. I get strong in my faith in that regard. I have an activity that my mental performance coach gives me, whether it's kind of brain games, he calls them, to kind of get my brain actively processing. And that really sets the tone for my day, and it really allows me to feel productive to start the day. I think a lot of people, continue, kind of ease into the day, and they're not really awake until 10, 11, even noon, because there's nothing that's making them feel productive. And they're kind of going through the motions of life, going through the motions with their career or with their job or whatever it may be. So unfortunately, I think it's all about being intentional with your day-to-day process, and also being intentional with not only the physical things that you have to do, but also the mental things you have to do, the self-care routines, such as my power hour, that you need to implement to ultimately balance the ability to take on the load of the day-to-day grind that may come about from chasing something, from trying to progress towards something. Because nothing worth having is easy. Not everyone is able to inherit awesome opportunities or awesome things. So a lot of people got to work for stuff. And with working for something, there's going to be days that suck. There's going to be times where you feel stagnant. There's going to be times where you fail. But all of those things are part of the process, part of the journey. Anybody who's super successful, who built something from scratch, who didn't necessarily inherit something, I guarantee you there are multiple things and stories that they would tell you about how many times they failed along the way, how many ideas that failed before the ones that we see. A lot of us see the success, and then we just think that just happened overnight. But in reality, yeah, it happened overnight. It just took 15 years for that overnight situation to happen.
Yeah.
So a lot of us see the success and all these good things happening, and we just assume that those guys just skipped a bunch of steps and made it. But ultimately, those guys also put in the work and face struggles and face issues that unfortunately affected their that probably affected their mental health along the way. But they stayed with it. They stayed consistent, and they had a true purpose they wanted to reach, so they stuck with it, and they ultimately got to where they wanted to be.
What I found as well is the people that put in the work, they're consistent, maybe they've had to build it all on their own. The skills that these people have by walking the walk themselves rather than being dropped into it, the difference is night and day. And someone will be able to figure it out, work out the kinks, learn the technology, learn how to troubleshoot and solve problems and all those things. They get there by trying to do it and failing and learning. And someone that's been given something that's already done, if something was to go wrong with that thing, or they have to figure it out on the spot, they can't because they've not had the learning journey of taking the steps every single day. Like I know if something happens in the gym, let's say, so I've been exercising now for ever, feels like. And if something was to, let's say, I go to do my training, my routine, my exercises, and I can't do a particular exercise. Maybe someone's using it, maybe it's the weather, whatever it is. Something happens that means I have to cut things short on that particular exercise. I know there's two or three different variations that I can do that will work and that will help and that will help me get that 1% better. If you're given a routine without figuring it out, without learning it backwards and inside out, you don't know how to do that. You will just skip it, or you will just not do it, or you will just not go because you can't do that one exercise, and therefore the whole workout is void in their mind. It makes me feel like the journey gives you so much more in terms of flexibility, commitment, the routine, the ability to be consistent in a different way. Maybe like you
Yeah,
said with the walking, maybe you tried 10 minutes a day, but today was only five because of whatever reason. That's still good enough. That's still helpful. Maybe you do another 5 minutes later on in the day to make up for it, that sort of thing. It becomes a bigger toolkit that you can use by taking the steps rather than just being given amazing genetics or, a lifestyle that is perfect for maintaining your health. And I think people can struggle with that because they don't think it's valuable. But I found that similar to that was it there was a boxer, I can't remember his name now, which is gonna crucify me now for the episode now. But everyone has a plan until they get punched in the face. And
yep.
it's only when you're punched in the face that you have
Tyson,
to then figure it out. Was it Tyson? Yeah, there we go.
I'm pretty
For
sure.
those,
Yeah,
there we go, Mike Tyson, for those that are listening. And it is that kind of thing. If everything is perfect, everyone will get there because it's perfect. When shit hits the fan, when you're struggling today, maybe you didn't sleep all that well, you've still got to get up and do it. And that is where your personality shines. That is where whether you're actually going to achieve it or not really steps forwards because it's not about the good days. Everyone does amazing when they have good days. It's the other side of the coin is if you're having a bad day, what happens then? How much do you fall off the wagon? How many missteps do you take? And how long do you let that one day become two, 5, 7, 30 in some cases, all because of that one thing that didn't go right?
yeah. No, I totally agree. It's all about sustainable wellness. And to your point, we're gonna have bad days, but you have to have the routines and the mindset ability to have mindset shifts when those things come about. You have to build that foundation for yourself that you ultimately know that you can rely on. As a former athlete, I make so many analogies and use so many analogies from sports, right? Like the greatest quarterbacks in the world, let's say Tom Brady, you know, they throw interceptions, right? They have turnovers, but they know that deep down inside, their process, their preparation is what created the separation for them to even be in this position. So they know that they're going to bounce back. There's going to be bad plays in every game. I always say Steph Curry is the greatest shooter ever, and he shoots 40%. That means he misses 6 out of 10 shots, and he's considered the best shooter of all time. So like, even when you're the very best at something, you're gonna fail. But when you have true process, true routine, and you really believe in those things because of the work that you put in, and because of the failures that have happened in the past, you're gonna know that you're gonna bounce back. And being able to rely on that is the important aspect. Too many people, unfortunately, don't believe in their process, don't believe in their routines. They don't have anything to kind of fall back on. They don't have the infrastructure, to fall back on, which is why I tell people it's so important to really get that self-care routine. What fills your cup, right? Because it's very hard for you to fill someone else's cup, or fill the cup in the other areas of your life if you don't fill that internal cup. So it's important to have these processes and routines in place so you can ultimately always know that when stuff does go wrong and shit hits the fan, that you're going to be okay. And
Yeah.
without those things in place, that's when we unfortunately have people dealing with the really, really bad mental health issues of, feeling the need to take their life, or, whatever it may be. And that's really unfortunate. And obviously there's other aspects that come into play there. But it's important to do the work. And whether that's going to therapy, going for those walks, trying to find some sort of spiritual connection, meditation. There's so many things that you should try and not write off, and try for 30 days. I tell people, try something for 30 days. If you don't feel like it moved the needle at all, try something else. But I guarantee you that if you truly dedicate yourself to stay consistent with something for 30 days, something that has worked for other people, it's likely that you'll find some grace in it. You'll find some positives in it. And at the very worst, maybe it's not for you, but I guarantee you that it's not going to make you worse. And that's okay. So I think it's very important for people to ultimately build these routines and build that infrastructure for themselves, so they can have the ability to know that they're going to bounce back from failure, from setbacks, from the stuff that will go wrong, and from those bad days. Because for me, no matter how bad my day is, I'm always trying to be the nicest person ever to the people around me, within all my relationships, because nobody deserves to go through what I'm going through, or feel my wrath just because I'm going through a bad day. And I think that's also very important. I think that also helps me snap out of it too. That being a nice person consistently helps me snap out of my funks.
Yeah, and I also know that you've got, is it 7 dimensions to wellness?
Yep.
There's not just one or two, there is in fact 7. So are you able to share at least a couple of those with us and help people understand
Yep.
how they're helpful?
Yep. I'll share all 7. So yeah, physical, mental, spiritual, um, intellectual, environmental, social, and with and financial. And with these dimensions of wellness, the reason why we look at it is because, again, it's a holistic approach. What may your wellness routine for Michael may be a lot different, or like where you're at in life. And we're all about meeting people where they're at in their wellness journey. So, for example, if maybe your financial wellness isn't where it needs to be, and that's ultimately impacting your mental wellness. And then because your mental wellness isn't where it needs to be, now your physical wellness isn't where it needs to be, right? Because you're mentally not where you need to be. So, okay, let's take a step back. Let's fill your financial wellness cup. Let's get your financial wellness where it needs to be. Let's give you the tips and a personalized guidance towards, helping you reach a certain level of financial literacy and financial wellness that puts you in a better position in life, which will ultimately amplify your mental wellness, because your mental wellness has been in a drain because your finances and your financial situation, because you haven't budgeted properly, you're living paycheck to paycheck, whatever it may be. has been messed up for a long time. So, okay, how do we fill the financial cup? So, which will ultimately enhance the mental cup, which will ultimately start to unlock the physical cup, because it's very hard. A lot of people are paralyzed by mental health, right? Because when they're dealing with something mentally, they're in a funk. They don't want to do, they don't, the last thing they want to do is go to the gym or exercise or take care of themselves or eat properly, and, that's another subject, but like obviously the way we eat and all that stuff impacts our mental health as well. But when outside factors such as like a financial issue or financial constraints in our lives, losing a job, whatever it may be, those things can really, really be detrimental. So how do we attack that head on, identify the problem with that dimension of wellness, so we can then ultimately enhance the other areas of wellness? And, environmental wellness may not be important to you, and that's okay. But for some people may really have aspirations to be very in tune with, saving the planet. And that's what fills their cup. That's what makes them feel better. So how do we give you tips to do that? How do we give you tips to have social wellness, because you don't feel like, you ever want to be in public settings or be around a lot of people? So how do we give you tips to get better at that, so that doesn't impact your mental health? It all kind of ties back to mental health being the head of the snake, and all those things kind of fill that up, right? Like within the 7 dimensions, I would say mental wellness is at the top, and then identifying where people are at in their wellness journey and what matters to them the most is the second step, and then figuring out where they're really struggling. That's ultimately impacting the mental wellness at the top, because now the mental wellness, getting that and filling that cup and getting that battery charge, is going to unlock your willingness to do so many other things, and that's why we break it down like that.
That's one of the things I was quite curious about is the effects of mental health. So I wonder, Corey, if do you have any of your own experiences to share about benefits of mental health on everything else, and just try and shed some light on why mental health is so important for all of the other aspects?
Yeah, 100%. I mean, going through the journey of all the injuries that I faced in my football career, um, I had some really dark days. All I, you know, as we know, all I did was play football, and like football was my life. It was something I gave so much time, energy, and effort to. And man, every time I felt like I was catching my stride, or I was gonna finally create the opportunity for myself to be healthy and play, I just continued to get hurt. And from somebody who was never hurt and always relatively healthy, to just having a long string of injuries, really affected my mental health for the long term. And it took me a long time to kind of snap out of it, understanding that I wasn't going to have the football career that I wanted to, and the career that I saw a lot of my peers and my friends go on to have. Some are still playing. Kudos to them. And, knowing that had I stayed relatively healthy, I could have potentially, had a longer career and reached the heights that I wanted to reach. But my knowing that my body kind of broke down on me really put me in a tough situation, because I definitely put all my eggs in that basket. I think you kind of have to, if your aspiration is to play at the highest level. Don't get me wrong, I still got my education, I did all that good stuff. But at the same time, it's really what I wanted to do. And not being, when I finally realized I had to hang them up and my body just couldn't hold up any longer at a young age, it took me a while to kind of get over that and really find my new purpose in life. And I that's why I think it's so important to find what your purpose is and find what your new routine is, because football was my routine. Every day I woke up, that was the first thing I thought about. And once that identity and that purpose is stripped, it's hard to bounce back, because you no longer have that routine. You no longer have that purpose that you woke up every day for. And I think a lot of times people who do struggle with mental health, they've lost their purpose, they lost their their reason to, in some instances, unfortunately, be alive, right? And that's why they feel the need to remove themselves from the world. So I think it's so important to identify your why on a day-to-day basis. Really practice gratitude, and write down the things you are grateful for, and continue to push that forward. And mental health is just, especially men's mental health, which doesn't get talked about enough, even though we're more likely to commit suicide. Um, you know, I think we're taught to be so alpha, and we're taught to hold things in, and that, like, stop being soft, or just deal with it. And unfortunately, when we hold all that stuff in and we hold all that bad, and it really impacts our mental health until sometimes we reach our breaking point. So, it's important to constantly do the work. It's important to stay disciplined, right? And do what's necessary in order to put yourself in position to not live a lifetime of regret.
Yeah, I've also found that a lot of guys, they're so used to leading from the front, or they're so used to leading the way in whatever it is. We're used to making decisions, we're used to being clearer than the other person, we're used to being more certain than the other person, more confident than the other person, whether it's, in family, friendships, jobs, whatever it is. I was so rewarded for being better or being the best. And whatever that looks like, whether we don't show our weaknesses, whether we, like a peacock only showing its feathers, that sort of thing, it can put a lot of pressure on those to stick around for a start. It'd be nice if we never lost our strengths, wouldn't it? But also our weaknesses to also not be shown or to improve on, whether it's success, happiness, whatever it is, there is that flip flop between strengths need to be shown on show all the time. Weaknesses need to be dampened down, not shown, light not being shown on them, that kind of thing. That we need to be seen to be the best version of ourselves all the time, because people that rely on it benefit from it, and people that ben actually benefit, like, in a different way. Maybe, the happier you are, the more positive you are, your whole family's happy, and the people that they impact
Yep.
benefit, and things like that. That the ripple effect of us being our best selves is huge. And I think that sometimes we can be relied upon so much for that. Not all the time, but very often our value is built around that.
Yep.
And if we have a bad day, bad week, bad month, bad year, that can impact pretty much everything that we touch. Now, I'm not saying that's just men, that's everybody. And I
Yep.
think sometimes it's the societal thing of, I don't think we have much else outside of that, or that's what it's being taught to us, that we don't have much else outside of that. And that's where the downfall is. It's not the pressure, it's not the stress, it's not any of that. It's the what happens if we lack those things. What happens to us if we no longer have the thing that we attached our identity to or our value to? What happens then? And it's that we feel stronger with.
Yep.
It's the lack of it's a bit like yourself with the football, trying to find your purpose again after you could no longer play must be difficult and must be so hard. The not knowing what to do with your day, the waking up and having your morning routine, to waking up and thinking, what's the point anymore? I can no longer play. That sort of thing.
Yep.
And it's so rough for people that have such a difficult time in some ways maintaining it. So what I would mean by that is, if your standard for being fitter, so for football purpose, we use that as an example, something that you know a lot about. Your standard for being match fit is quite high. So if you can't do the things that it takes to be match fit, it's quite harsh, it's quite tough, but it's not an easy thing to deal with if you're no longer match fit. If your standard is going for a walk for 10 minutes a day, much easier to maintain as opposed to the fitness that you would have had to
Yep.
maintain. Similar to everything else, like if your standard for being successful or happy is so high, it's naturally more difficult to maintain. And if life gives you lemons, you try your best to make lemon meringue or lemonade, whatever the quote is. But if your standard is it has to be a lemon meringue cheesecake with all the trimmings and not just lemonade, or cut the lemon up and put it into some water because you don't have the ability to make a cake right now, and that's okay, that then becomes rough. It's the changes. It's the no longer able to do what you used to be able to do, or no longer able to give your best or be your best. That's worse than in some cases never really going that road, never really raising your standards. Because if things change, you kind of in a way, wish you stayed where you were. Like if your
Yep.
standard's so high, it's like, okay, well, I wish I just had to walk 5 minutes a day and I'd be fine. Or your standard of happiness is so high. Sometimes I wish I just had a dog and that was it. That was all I needed. But no, I've got all these things and life gets complicated and I've got a family now and all of these things that all make up your standards and what makes you happy. Sometimes
Yep.
that can have a harsh effect, which then some people in some cases, quite rightly so, they shortcut this whole thing, don't they? Where why put myself in that position when I could just live simply and just not put any of this stress on myself, not put any of this pressure on myself to strive for more, to have all of these things, if there's always that potential loss or things like that. So I wonder what your thoughts are on that. And also some people that maybe in that boat of shortcutting the whole thing. When you sort of think, well, why should I do all of these things when I could do the opposite? Because you've been there, done it, you walk the walk as much as anybody else. How can you inspire someone to still strive for those things and not just listen to our conversation and think, I'll just live in a tent and call it quits?
Yeah. So, I think life is always about reassessing where you're at, right? Like, I think life is truly a book and we have these chapters, right? Like, what matters to me from a physical standpoint isn't going to be the same as when I was a professional athlete or a collegiate athlete, right? So I'm not going to go into the gym and try to squat 750 pounds anymore when I played off as I did when I played offensive line, or try to be the strongest guy in the weight room, right? Like my goals are different, and I think it's very important for people to assess where they are at in life and also assess what their goals are. And I think sometimes, to the point you were making earlier in the conversation about like getting thrown off a little bit just because like you're at the gym and the piece of equipment that you need for your necessary routine is being utilized, so you just kind of give up on it, and as opposed to improvising. I think the constant assessment of life and what your goals are and what you're striving for, I think gives you the ability to give you the full picture of A, whether or not you should continue down the path of striving for it. B, are you being realistic about who you are, what you're capable of doing at this standpoint in your life? And then C, is this your true purpose that you're looking to, are you doing this for um, intrinsic reason or extrinsic reasoning, right? And I think that's also important because, if something is intrinsic and internally valuable to you, then I think that's when it's really going to continue to keep you going, keep you motivated. But if you're doing it because you saw somebody else do it, or all because you think it's going to create this value for yourself externally, that like isn't realistic or true to who you are, then that may not be the right reason. So I would tell people who are kind of stuck or wondering if they should continue down the path of whatever it may be that they're working towards, to really assess um, what they're working towards. Do they feel it's their true purpose? Um, do they feel that, like, if they were to truly reach that goal, um, is it really going to fulfill them? And then lastly, are they are is the goal that they set for themselves realistic, based on who they are, what they are, at this point in their life? And I think if you can answer those questions and take a deep dive into those questions, I think you'll have a better understanding of if you should continue, and then B, if you do feel you should continue, how you should continue. And it, like I said, for me, I don't look like, with my new physical, and I look great. I've been in the best shape that I've been in a long time. I had gained a bunch of weight after football and got out of shape like none other before. I just was living life and wasn't exercising as much, and I had to really lock back in. But I had to find a new way of reaching my fitness goals, and I had to find what worked. I personally can never imagine running a marathon, but there's a lot of people who run marathons, right?
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
and that's why I think it's really about assessing who you are, what you're willing to do, and like what your true goals are. Just because I can't picture myself running a marathon doesn't mean I can't be in shape. And just like there's tons of people who can just, at the drop of a dime, go run a marathon because they want to check it off their bucket list. So it's I give a lot of kudos to the people who are just normal everyday people working their 9 to 5s, and then they go kill themselves at a CrossFit event, or they want to continue being an extreme athlete. That person, I think they found their purpose. I think they realize, like, that level of fitness is what it feels rewarding to them, and that's okay. And then maybe you're someone who 10-minute walk or 60-minute walk is what feels rewarding to you. And that's why it's all about assessing what feels good, what feels right for you. You can't live your life based on someone else's journey. You need to live your life based on your own self-assessment and your own journey, and then really, put the work in to understand who you are, what your approach is. And lastly, like, one of the analogies I like to use, again, from sports, is like, the best coaches I've ever been around are really good at assessing the personalities of their players. And what I mean by that, they know how to coach each individual player based on their emotional capacity. So there's some players who you can be really hard on and they'll respond. There's some players who you can be really hard on and they just shut down and they feel paralyzed, and it makes them a worse player. So coaches have the really good ones have a really good ability to identify, okay, I know who I can really push, who really responds to tough coaching, to hard-nosed coaching, to really getting on them about making a mistake. Then I know who I need to kind of simmer that down a little bit and coddle them a little bit more in order for them to respond. And I think that kind of same assessment is true for yourself. You may be someone, stop being so hard on yourself. If that's who you are, like, if that's not what you respond to, then stop doing it. If you feel like you need to, constantly tell yourself how good you are, then do that. If that's ultimately what is gonna allow you to, feel better and do better, in the long run. And I just think too many people look at other people and other things, and they try to compare themselves, and they see things work for other people, so they think it's going to work for them, and that's just not the case always. There's no one size fits all approach when it comes to wellness and reaching your goals, and that's why I think it's the constant effort of trying things, to really create that routine that works for you, and that's what matters in order to allow you to keep going, and working towards the things that you want to work towards in life.
There's a lot of power in the assessments as well, because for yourself, when you shifted from the heavy weights into something else, that would be dead easy to beat yourself up about never being able to do that. But did the shift make it easy to let that go? Do you think? Do you think having that reassessment, those reassessing of the goals and resetting and things like that, do you think that made a difference, or do you think you still had to do some work to be able to let those go? Because I imagine people listening could be thinking, okay, I can make my shift and I can reset some new goals, but I'm still going to be thinking about this over here. I'm still going to have the mental chatter in my head of, oh, well, you could be doing this instead. And they start to compare notes, so to speak. What was it
Yep.
like for you?
Yeah, so I mean, I think the reassessment was enough for me, and again, obviously, others' reassessment may be harder than mine. I mean, I no longer had to block guys that were 300 pounds and super strong, so that's what motivated me to be as strong as possible. I no longer have to do that on a day-to-day basis. So, and I also know that the heavier weight you lift on a day-to-day basis and on a consistent basis is very tough on your body. It's tough on your joints. It leaves you more liable to injuries, a torn pec or, whatever it may be, because it's heavy weight. Like, your body lifting that much weight on a consistent basis, it's very tough on your body. So understanding that at one point in my life, I was the price of being as strong as I possibly could was worth being able to hold my own on the playing field against other men who were just as strong, if not stronger sometimes. So, that was okay. But now looking at who I am and what I am in life now, I no longer have to do that on a day-to-day basis. So for me, it was taking a step back. And yeah, for a moment, did I still want to be super strong and show on Instagram and social media how strong I was as someone who was in fitness, et cetera, et cetera. Like, yeah, that was important for me. But as soon as I kind of took another assessment of like uh, how impactful it can be on my body in the long run to continue to live this way, I don't need to do this to look a certain way. And at this, what mattered to me more was looking and feeling my best, not being the strongest person I possibly could be on a day-to-day basis. So I think that reassessment, and I don't look back at trying to be as strong as possible. I still can move some good weight around, and if I'm feeling really good with my trainer, I'll go for some old weights and I'll dabble in those things if I'm feeling good and I've worked my way up to that within my program that I'm currently doing. Sure, but that's not something I don't wake up and strive to do that. And I think for the person who's kind of like, okay, yeah, I can reassess, and I'm not saying it's necessarily going to be easy based on what you're reassessing and what you've been doing for a long time. But if what you're doing isn't working, or you're kind of at a roadblock with it, then it's probably time for that reassessment. And I wouldn't be so hard on yourself at just letting the old go, because clearly you've kind of plateaued with whatever you were doing before, and it's kind of brought you to this roadblock to where you are even in a position of feeling like you need to reassess. And yeah, honestly, I don't have the mental fortitude anymore to work my way up to a 700-pound squat. I just don't feel like doing that. Like, so where like
Yeah.
back in the day, like when I was in a weight room full of testosterone and my teammates, and we were, picking each other up and like getting each other excited to lift these heavy weights. Like I was okay with that. I was as tough as it was. And I think about some of the conditioning and things that we did and the stuff that we put our bodies through just to be the best athlete possible. I have no desire to do that again, and, and, and that's okay. I just think I still like to go hard and work hard and exercise and and you know, reach my goals and make sure I'm staying fit. I like to feel healthy and feel like I'm in shape, but I don't like to push myself to the exhaustion levels of what I used to push myself as an athlete, and that's okay. So I think what matters most in anybody's assessment is what's truly sustainable, and that goes back to what I was talking about early. Assess what the goal is, and then don't look at the whole staircase. If your goal is to lose 20 pounds, you're not going to lose 20 pounds in a week. So what's more achievable? One pound a week, 2 pounds a week. And yeah, maybe there will be weeks where you're really on it and you lose 3 to 4 pounds. Great. But what's sustainable? If you do this hard crash diet that where you cut out all these things cold turkey and you're miserable, that's not going to be sustainable. That's not a real habit that you want to build. You're probably going to relapse. You may lose the 20 pounds, but you're more likely than not to put it back on because you're eventually going to want to eat some of those things that you want to eat again. And that's okay. That's why it's like creating a sustainable solution as opposed to a quick fix. And I think a lot sustainability comes from a true assessment of self to really figure out what that goal is and how you're going to get there, and breaking down that big picture into bite-sized achievable goals along the way that will ultimately allow you to get to that ultimate goal. And from lastly, wellness, mental wellness, physical wellness, career financial wellness, whatever wellness that you're striving for, it's not a destination, it's a journey. A destination means that once you get there, it's over. No, if I get to my weight loss goal, that doesn't mean I just go back to my old ways. I still have to sustain whatever habits that I've created to get here in order to stay at this weight, this healthy weight that whether my doctor told me I should get to, or, nutritionist or coach, whatever it may be, I still need to do the things necessary in order to maintain this level of health for myself, this level of success for myself, or whatever it may be. So that's why it's important to create a sustainable journey and a sustainable process for yourself in order to not only reach your goals, but to keep your goals.
It sounds like you tend to use a bit of intuition with when to do these assessments. Is that right? And would you have like a preference for how often you would reassess? Like I'm thinking of things like, okay, if I start to feel unhappy or I start to struggle in this area, maybe I'm struggling with being consistent in that particular area. Maybe there's a reason for that. Maybe there's a reason why I'm struggling with it. I should reassess to see if there's some tweaks that I can make, some adjustments that I can make. And I would guess the intuition plays a part, or would you recommend it anyway, just for sustainability purposes every so often? What would you recommend?
I mean, honestly, I break down all my goals into 4 categories: weekly, monthly, quarterly, and yearly. So obviously the weekly is very quick assessments of, okay, what's my goal? More like box checks. Did I do all the things I wanted to do within the week to get towards my quarterly goal, right? And then let's just say like January 1st, okay, by December 31st of 2023, I want to lose 30 pounds. Okay. Well, if you want to lose 30 pounds, there's 4 quarters in a year. Okay, so let's lose 4 pounds a quarter, right? That sounds more achievable, right? Or 5 pounds a quarter. That sounds more achievable. So okay, now that's my quarterly goal, 5 pounds a quarter. So that's 12 weeks. That's 12 weeks to lose 5 pounds. So okay, that seems way more achievable than saying, oh, I got to lose 20 pounds. I lose 20 pounds tomorrow. So now I broke it down to these bite-sized goals. So, okay, I got to lose 5 pounds a quarter. So I know what my year goal is 20 pounds. I know my quarterly goal is 5 pounds. So my weekly goal, I got 12 weeks. I'm looking at, zero point 0.3 to zero point 0.5 pounds a week. And okay, now what is my weekly routine going to be to help me, lose that incremental weight over time on a week to week basis. And now I have my weekly checklist that I'm checking on, just making sure I'm hitting that. And then I kind of, not only is it a checklist, but I rate it on a scale of 1 to 10. So, nutrition, some weeks it's going to be a 4. You go on vacation, or, you're really stressed and you just keep ordering Uber Eats, or keep ordering takeout. And, you know, I think assessing that, or like, if your goal is weight loss, again, I keep using that, but maybe you gained a pound, a pound that you didn't want to gain. And that's okay. But maybe that just means next week you got to be a little more disciplined than you were the prior week. You just had to get some things back on track. But that's going to happen. Don't beat yourself up. There's nothing you can do about what you did last week. That week happened already. So let's reset. Let's, on that Sunday or Monday or whatever day you would like to reassess your weekly goals. Yeah, maybe your nutrition was a 3 last week. So that's what contributed to you gaining a pound or two, and setting you back a little bit towards your 5-pound quarterly goal. And that's okay. So now you just lock back in, and don't beat yourself up. Don't let that week of eating, in a way that you didn't want to, throw you off the path of your ultimate goal. At the end of the day, what gets measured gets managed. And that's why I think it's important to track. And I don't think you have to like kill yourself over tracking forever. But when you create the foundation of tracking, get yourself to a point of making it automatic, I think it sets you up for nothing but success. There's a reason why we get grades in school, is because our grades are a metric of how well we're doing. And ultimately, that's why it's important to not only create goals, but also create metrics and continue to track along the way, so you can have that assessment for yourself to look at, in order to really know where you stand, and also maybe what's contributing to the success or failures along the way. And I think that's important in allowing us to be honest with ourselves along the journey.
Is there anything that you haven't mentioned yet that is a major contributor to creating these more sustainable results? So it might be a no, you never know. But what's missing? What have we not spoken about yet?
I don't think anything major. I think the major thing is consistency, man. Really, really focusing on consistency. There's days I don't want to do some of the habits I'm really trying to form, but it feels so rewarding when I do them. And I'm like, and I feel productive. I feel good about, doing it. Right. And I just tell people, I know it's a Nike slogan, but I'm telling you, just do it. Even if it's that 10-minute walk, it's 10 minutes. Go get that 10-minute walk in. And even if like you're struggling, just get into the gym. Even the practice of putting your clothes on and going to the gym and leaving, if that's the first step towards your gym journey, sure. Like if that's the first process, the first incremental step for you to just put your clothes on and even take the action of going to the gym, and you don't do anything, that's okay. At least you put your clothes on, you actively went to the gym, and maybe you left right away, but you got to the gym, and that's a win, right? So maybe next time you go to the gym and you walk on the treadmill for a little bit, or you do one exercise. It's okay to kind of stack along the way as you get more and more comfortable. Because again, I'm no one to say, just go to the gym. Maybe you don't like going to the gym, and that could be a real roadblock for you mentally. So I'm no one to say, because I'm not in your body, I'm not in your position. There are so many different variables that could come into play for, why you don't want to go to a gym. Social anxiety, and you don't feel comfortable, or you're not self-confident enough to be at the gym, whatever it may be. So I'm in no position to just tell people that they should just go to the gym. So what I am in position to do is like, how can we find solutions that still allow you to um, enhance your overall wellness and well-being without sacrificing your mental health or enhancing your anxiety, whatever it may be, in order to help you reach those goals. So that's why I think assessments and constant assessments of self is important, because that allows us to find solutions that are catered to you in order to enable you to be successful. And that's what matters to me. And constantly understanding that wellness and weight loss and reaching our goals, whether it's in fitness or wellness or career or financial or whatever it may be, family goals, it's not gonna happen overnight. B, it's not a one size fits all approach, and understanding that and being okay with that is what matters. Stop comparing yourself to other people and what other people are doing. You don't know what they're going through, how they got there, or their upbringing, their environment. There's so many different variables that come into play that matter when it comes to reaching our goals. And I think as long as we continue to understand that, we'll be a lot better off with our own journey and assessing that journey and doing what we need to do to get ourselves to where we need to be.
Completely agree with that. And I think more people need to hear it as well. Like they need to be okay with the fact that their journey is going to look different from the next person or their family members or their friends, that sort of thing. I really enjoyed the conversation. It's been quite eye-opening. I appreciate you sharing your own stories as well. How can people get involved with the app that you have to help people? So, what is it? How can people find it? And how can people connect with you?
Yep. So we have a free habit forming app. It's You just type 1 and 1 into the app store. It's mainly just for if you have an iPhone. So it's the number one and the number one again. So 1 AND 1. That's the app. It's a free habit forming app. Feel free to download it. And yeah, our goal with that is to help people build better habits consistently. Because again, habits are a foundation of who we are, good and bad ones. Hopefully, good habits are the ones that we're helping you form with the utilization of our app. And then we're constantly getting ready to release a bunch of new features to help enhance that process and help amplify the process of helping people build better habits and also personalize their wellness routines and create recommended personalized wellness journeys for people. So super excited about that. And then oneandonelife.com is our media hub where we have tons of content. There's also content on the app as well within the 7 dimensions of wellness that we talked about. But oneandonelife.com, we put out 30 to 40 articles a month about different topics of wellness, within the 7 dimensions of wellness. And then my Instagram is Big C 1and1. I talk about tons of wellness tricks, wellness hacks, wellness tips from a place of experience as well as a place of expertise as a certified habit forming coach and personal trainer, as well as a strength and conditioning coach. So, and I've worked with a lot of people to help them reach their fitness and wellness goals. So I try to talk from a place of experience with my own journey, because I'm not perfect in mine, but also from a place of expertise in helping people reach their goals. And, my goal is to help people get 1% better each day. And our goal at 1and1 is let's get 1% better, just 1% better together, because that's what it's all about. And I love what I do. And I'm passionate for seeing people unlock a new level of self-confidence and unlock their path, for what they're trying to do in life and being fulfilled in the most best way possible. So thank you so much for having me on. And I really appreciate the time and I really appreciate the conversation.
Thanks so much for being a guest on the show. Those that are listening, feel free to subscribe, share the show, tell others, and also leave a review wherever you are listening into your podcasts. Corey, it's been great. I've enjoyed it. Thanks so much for joining me, and I look forward to keeping in touch. Thank you.
Thanks, Michael.